Hello, guys. Thank you very much for coming. So I would like to start with the introduction. So this is one of the public programs called Whose Story Is It? As a part of the exhibition, If Only It Is Seen Thus From Afar. So this talk, we will be focusing mostly on authorship, representation, and storytelling of the artists or whoever's involved in in every terms of the artworks. So in particularly, we will be talking contexts such as what does it mean to tell a story that is not yours, and how do we navigate the blurry terrain of speaking on behalf of others. So this will more be like a little lousy, messy sort of like discussion between one another over a coffee. So I hope you guys will enjoy and you can join the discussion along with it too. So in this discussion, in the Zoom, there is Zicky. Zicky is a photographer, and he is one of the artists from the exhibition. It's currently you guys are in it. And there's Montien, who is a curator and an artist who is focused mainly in the queer and performing works. And he is Hùng, an art writer, occasionally a curator, whose emphasis is on Vietnam and Southeast Asia context. So part one, we will be talking about stories we borrow, stories we tell. So the real questions that I want to raise for this part is it really our story to tell? So in this panel, three of you guys come from different cultural practices, background, but you guys always have to intersect one another in different occasions. So how do you recognize the limits of your voice when working with other people's reality across borders, identities, and stories? So I want to start with Zicky because this is one of the show that we have been working together in Bangkok. So Zicky, you deal with a lot of like portrait photographs and about people and about where they live and work. So when it comes to portrait-based photographs, what is like your boundary, and then where do you like stop, and like how do you approach to each individual whenever you're trying to start a new series or like differently people from different background?
Hi, Zicky, photographer. Just introduce myself a bit. So to answer your question, I work with a lot of faces, a lot of portraitures for my professional career. I'm a portrait photographer, so either for commercial or commission work, I'm always working with faces. They're used to seeing faces, photographing faces, and telling being told what to do with them. So whenever I do my practice, my photography, I am very drawn to faces or bodies to capture, to make images of. So when it comes to telling my own story, my personal story, it's so important for me that I do not bring in my professional approach into my personal work, which is making a spectacle out of a portrait, or just to tell, just to sell a play, to make it look more interesting than it would be to me personally. And so that is something that I always have to remind myself, and always have something that I always had dialogue with myself, making portraits. And also, but in my own personal story, like this one, I have images displayed in the work as my personal work. And these images, these faces that you see are the people that are in a very close area of my life. It's important for me that what you see from these faces, what the audience see from these faces are what I really see in them. So it might not be too pretty or cool or it might not be something that is like more understandable or accessible. That is okay. Because for me, it's about me being trying to stay so honest with myself. If it means even if it means that I'm sacrificing a certain idea or like a certain composition. So what the audience sees from these portraits are what I see of that honestly. Because I don't believe that you cannot create an objectively truthful picture. I think it's always about my experience with these people, my vision of these people, my relationship with these people. So for me, I try to be more honest with myself, not necessarily to go to people, maybe. But that is something that I try to practice in my approach of photography.
Okay, to add a little more, one more question for that one. So when you talk about honesty and your approach, do you want me to speak louder?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what does it mean to borrow someone else's story? So we talk a lot about honesty and truth and everything. So have you ever had an experience of borrowing someone else's story?
Throughout my career or my in the span of working on my own personal stories, I try to not do that because just because I am a Korean queer person doesn't mean that I can speak for a Korean queer displaced person from the border areas or some of them more less fortunate. So our identity overlaps that I cannot. If I do not have the proximity, if I don't have the similar shared experience, like lived experience, I can't do that. I'm very, very vigilant on that. So I try to not do that. But when I did my workshop in Zurich, a local workshop, I photographed a very trans woman, and I later found out more about the depth of her personality and her career even, which is actually for a storyteller or like an artist. There are some things that are more exciting to talk about, like seemingly exciting to talk about. But for her, because I believe that it is not something that that I want to take it from her and to share it. The story became more about our friendship in a fleeting moment, which is the truth. We met for a week and we hang out for a week. So the way that I photograph, the way that I presented the themes of photograph, I try to not be persuaded into I try to sacrifice a little bit about a little these certain things that can make the story more how should I say, more cool or bigger than it is. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Zicky. I will continue my question with Hùng. So, Hùng, you are an art writer, especially focusing a lot with the Southeast Asia context. So, when you work with artists from different cultural contexts and different geographical background, have you ever felt like you're interpreting too much as a writer? Or have you ever felt like you're misframing, or have you ever felt like overrating a context to a certain point?
Thank you for your question. I think that in Southeast Asia, when the moment you mention the word Southeast Asia, there are certain things that people expect to hear. Like in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Burma, in Myanmar. So I think first of all, we all interpret. I mean, I will not I will not say that I don't have personal interpretation. I mean, despite everything I know about the artist, I will make my own personal interpretation. So, and that's a human instinct. I think it's a human instinct to make our own story, to create meanings and structures out of all of these elements that we're given. And in the art scene, it's visuals, narratives, it's memories, performance. But I think as an art writer, you do need to draw certain boundaries. You don't want to write in like a over domineering way. And it's not you don't get to dominate that narrative or that artwork or that artist's life. So when I write about artists, about their work, I usually make it a point to meet the artist. I talk to the artist. Maybe sometimes not about the artwork or the exhibition. It's mostly just to get a sense of who they are, their life story, what they have experienced, how that might have influenced their work. And usually try to give like a broad perspective of what they have gone through and how that might have shaped their practice. So that's what I do to kind of balance out my own personal interpretation, because you can't escape interpretation. You will interpret the work anyway, and you need to, as an art writer, you need to claim that kind of ownership, that kind of authority, but at the same time, you understand that your way of interpreting is not the only way. And I think in the region, in Southeast Asia, in each of our countries, I think sometimes we don't really, or we allow this kind of monopolizing interpretation to happen. So I think it's, and also my writing, I try to focus on the work and then providing some background information from the artist just to kind of like prop it up. Because at the end of the day, I don't know the artist fully unless like we're friends. But even then, like we don't know our friends fully. So you can only, if you're given, 600 words, 800 words to write about this one person, their life, their stories, their artwork, what things will you prioritize? So you ask yourself that question, and then you kind of come up with the structure. Then you fit things in. Sometimes they don't fit very perfectly. Once in a while they fit perfectly. I'm very happy with that. But yeah, so interpretation is inevitable. You will do it, but you kind of have to understand that it's not the truth. Your interpretation is yours. And I think in my book, good writing allows for multiple perspective to kind of spring out of it, instead of like, here's what I say and here's the truth. And I think it's not very constructive. It's not very benefiting to have that kind of writing. Just, my personal opinion. Other people might like it. You're allowed to like it.
Thank you very much, Hùng. So I owed. So with you, I have like a very personal interest on so with you often work with performances, and some ephemeral works also focus on a lot of queer context. So you work with the queer ritual based works, and then you have to do all this in a very Thai traditional conservative environment.
Me? Conservative?
No, I mean
the
city itself, there is a Thai conservativeness. So how do you see yourself within or outside those boundaries, or when that sort of context often pops up, how do you see yourself with it? How do you project yourself or your work among that conservativeness? Because we're still in the Southeast Asia context. So
Thank you for that question, Sid. That's really great. Just to say hi to everyone, my name is Montien. I'm an artist, also a founder of Bodhisattva LGBTQ Art Space, as a co-curator of this show. Yes, as Sid mentioned, my gallery is the first gallery in Thailand to dedicate it only for Southeast Asian queer artists. So I wouldn't say specialize, but I focus in that alongside my work. And to be honest, I mean, I think similar to what Zicky was saying, I think honesty is really important in the works, and all the works that I make, be it performance or rituals or painting, they all have something that I could, relate to, that I take ownership. And otherwise I wouldn't do it. If it doesn't relate to me, then I will feel very weird about it. And as one say, I think we can't escape interpretation. Like, that's how we live and that's how we connect. I just want to say, I think going back to your idea about borrowing someone's narrative, and in today's society, we always like, oh, it's my story to tell, or it's his story, or it's her story, their story, and very binary, drawing the line between us and them, right? And this is like red shirt, yellow shirt, Khmer, Thai, like there's so many boxes that we these days kind of divided ourselves into and feel like we have sole ownership of particular narrative. But the reality for me is that we all live together and we have intersectionality that we all have ownership of. We might not have the same perspective of that point, but it's inevitable that we all connected, right? We share some type of story. So I don't think it's so much of like, are we borrowing someone else's story? Because we all have something. I mean, particularly in the context of Southeast Asia, right? We share so many things. But my concern in my practice would be the power dynamic. That's more important of like, is it my story, yours? But like the power dynamic of that person who's telling the story within that situation. For example, as a queer person, right, within very heteronormative society, then you don't have the upper hand, right? So you as a straight cis man person, you have to acknowledge that your voice within, this space is louder than queer voices. At the same time, me as a Thai person in Bangkok have, an upper hand in terms of doing this exhibition in Thailand. So like being aware of this kind of different access point and power dynamic in which we tell the story, that's more what I look at in terms of borrowing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So three of you guys actually answer all the questions quite thoroughly. So as a conclusion, so we talk a lot about ownership, honesty, and then interpretation and power dynamics is very interesting concept, which also leading to my part two, talking about authorship, ego, and artist responsibility. So this question number two is mainly focused on who actually gets the credit and who carries the weight. So to an extent, this is a little sensitive discussion to make, especially as being as Burmese artists and curators, talking a lot about migration and distance in other cities. So in this part, we will be talking about who has the right to speak for who, and then in the end of the day, who gets the credit, and does that credit overdue? Or like in collaborative or socially engaged artworks, especially in those sort of contexts, authorship becomes sometimes blurry and sometimes become a little bit murky and icky. And artists, and at that time, maybe sometimes artists get more recognition, and when the community carries a burden. So how do we sort of like balance it out? So we will be talking about that. So for that, I want you guys to give us an example, maybe like your work or a work that you have seen somewhere or whatever it is. If you don't want to mention an artist, it's fine. Just construct a basic idea of the work. And how did you like manage, or how did you define that? Is it like, okay, the artist is overtaking the credit from the community, even though he doesn't know the community that much? So, how did you start to do that? So just give us an example of your previous project or previous writing piece or an artwork you have seen somewhere else, whether it really, see the balance, or whether you see that it's not balanced enough. So I think we should start with Hùng.
So the question is like, in terms of credit giving and okay. I think I can only speak from the perspective of an observer when it comes to these things, because I'm personally not an artist. So I'll exempt myself of that burden. I mean, in terms of credits, I think when you create things with other people, right? If it's a if you're not an artist who works only in your studio and don't have a community engagement practice, then by definitions you have to acknowledge that there is contribution from other people, communities, and now, to quote a very popular terms in contemporary art, non-human entities, things that we don't see but we also engage with. I mean, personally, for me, I think I don't care so much about the credit, but I care that everyone is getting compensated in one way or another. If they cannot be compensated financially and monetarily, then they need to be given the credit for some kind of acknowledgement, network benefit out of that collaboration. Otherwise, it's an imbalanced collaboration. I think I've seen ways that artists can kind of address these issues of credit. So I think the easiest way is that you put in your title of the artwork itself, because there is this politics of titling that it has to be short, it has to give all the basic information, and it doesn't have anything else. So in the credit, you can actually play around with it. You can include a story about the community in there. You highlight the community or the people or the entities that you work with, instead of, just your name and your title. So I think that's one way that I've seen artists kind of approach this issues of credit and kind of distributing the balance and the weight. Because at the end of the day, if we look at the art market on the art scenes that we're in, either whether it's regional or it's global, it's the artist's name that gets carried. And it's rarely the community that they work with. So as an artist, if you're, concerned about these problems, then you find ways to include them, you find ways to represent them. And again, we go back to the question of representation. No representation is perfect, right? You try to do your best you can. People can always say that, oh, this is being tokenistic, you're exploiting them. But I think it starts from the place of whether you really want to include them or not. Are you just going to a shop and, you get the ingredients that you need, and then you go home and you bake your cake. Here's the case where I've seen artists where, negotiating with institutions to bring the community into the space. I think the most recent case is the opening of the Pacific Oceania wings in the Met. So they just opened a whole other building to house artworks from Pacific Ocean artists. Some of them are from, I think the Philippines is also included in that. There were some Filipino artists as well. And then there are some very touching moments where, actual communities were invited to come and do ceremonies and, kind of engaging. I don't know how genuine that engagement is because of language and cultural boundaries. And those things will always happen. But I think at least the artist and the institution made it a point to bring them in and make it a point to give the highlights and the limelight to these communities. And, who knows what come out of those things, but at least their presence was there. So I think that's the best we can do. It's to actually try to negotiate for credit, for inclusions, so I think it doesn't really matter if you say that you're inclusive. It boils down to what you do. And people see it. And, you can say you care about community and your approach is community based, but your community is nowhere to be seen. And you don't have to be from that community, right? And this is a kind of a tricky question because we're like, okay, you don't get to talk about them because you're not from there. But we talk about other people all the time. I mean, we're a very gossipy region. I mean, I sure have talked about other groups that I have no business talking about. So, if it's all talk, it's fine. If you can talk about other people, and you will. But it depends on how you talk about other people, right? How you want them to be seen through your voice and your writings and your artworks. So again, I think that willingness takes away a bit of the burden of representation that, at the end of the day, we're all carrying. It doesn't exempt you from whatever, consequences might come from your representation, and you will have to owe up to it, whether you like to or not. But it kind of gives a clear ground on what you want to do. At least your intention is clear. And then people can interpret it whichever way they want.
Thank you very much. There are so many thought-provoking moments and fun way of also approaching to this matter. So I want to ask Oat about this one. Do you have any personal or
well, maybe this exhibition is a great example.
Okay.
I totally agree with Hùng in a way that, it's about the process. And that's where the intentions and how you decide people to get involved, not just put them at the end with, ticking boxes. Cause as a queer person in Pride Month, that happened with me at all times, I can share so many stories just this past 2 weeks, how we were just tokenism in so many things, right? But coming back to this show, working with you, curating this show, to start with, I'm not from Myanmar. So obviously I'm an outsider trying to tell the story, trying to give this platform to artists and their stories that I'm not that familiar with. So I think that's kind of linked to your question. And just to be clear, talking about credit, I give all the credit to Sett and for curating this show. I'm just the person who just standing by and facilitating this to happen.
If there's any police in the room, we bear no burden to this exhibition. Just to have that on record.
Yes.
It's getting good.
How I saw my part in this is one as a connector, right? So I know that I have no business dictating what the artist's gonna say. I know that I'm a connector for them to this exhibition space, to SAC. I'm a connector to the funding. I'm connecting, the audience, the press. I give visibility. And number two is, I try to form friendships with all the artists. We do all the Zoom call. I try to understand where they're coming from and make sure that me as almost representing the audience per se, the Thai audience of SAC, what kind of work would be suitable for this space. So, in the terms of, do I have authorship, how much my voice is in it, I see myself in this kind of context as a facilitator more than, trying to control the narrative, if that makes sense. I don't know. You have to ask Zicky.
Yeah.
Zicky, am I dictating your work? You can tell now.
So yeah, After,
Yeah.
okay. So after like Zicky, do you have any personal experience when it comes to sharing about this topic, particular topic?
As a photographer, I have not been in a phase, in a situation where I get to share my platform or help amplify voices yet. But I do agree with what you both have to say. It's about intention. The intention is very important, and I think people can see it. And I can only speak for the perspective of the photographer. I've seen a lot of her work that is so expressive, that is so like demeaning, but they still like will aware that there's such a big about how these like third photographs change, like how it changed the world or whatever. But people can see, people can now people know when the work is being like a bad bad representation or it's like people can tell. So I think as an artist, as a creator, as a storyteller, I have to have that kind of thought process, like an idea in my mind. If I will be like speaking for somebody else, if I will, because at the end of the day, my name will be splashed across the body of work, and then if my work is not collaborative or inclusive of certain community, it will just show, and then go over, and then you have to live with it. So, yeah.
Also, Sid, like I'll leave this to the audience as well, because I find it quite difficult sometimes to fathom, like, especially when we work with marginalized community, right, or very very say socially excluded. Like there were artists, for example, P Pokchat in Thailand, in Bangkok Binale, doing a whole series of photographs of the tribe from the south, right? And they don't even have electricity, right? And then we're like talking about them in Soho House, having a glass of wine in our hands, about like how exotic these images are. And then when we talk about how, okay, how do we repay or compensate, as you said, to the subjects of our work that we benefit from, right? It's just very tricky too, because they don't appreciate, or they don't, things that we value sometimes is not what they want or they value, right? The same thing here, like we're sitting in this beautiful gallery space talking about another country that's being bombed or being killed by their own government. It's like, how do we, and art world is so pretentious, right? Saying an artist himself. I feel like what we do is like the 1% of the society. So to sitting here talking about like, oh yeah, we're gonna try to like make everyone happy. It's just a very weird thing, like in my own experience. And I guess that's part of the job, that we sell like 1 million baht artwork, but at the same time we're, getting resources from these places. And some people painted that as like a savior syndrome kind of thing. And some artists really does that. I feel really uncomfortable when I see that. By the way, I love Pip Pokchat work. Her work is brilliant. And when we talk about this at her artist talk, like, remember we were like, how do we, as an artist, we want to tell the story. And I think art is a great way of telling story of marginalized community. And that's why I do my gallery. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge like the class difference, money difference, geological difference. There's a lot to be said in that gap.
Oh, I love the three responses that takes the question in a three different approach. But there's one little extra thing that I want to add on, because we're living in a viral era right now. So let's say whatever topics, like marginalized or not, whatever community we're working in. Okay, what if the artwork becomes more viral, more and more viral, maybe either online or maybe through something else, like, so does it still belong to the artist? Like, is the authorship still relevant? So like, does the artist or the gallery or curator has the responsibility to always relate this credit or relate this context back with the community, whoever the artist has worked with? So how does it change when things become more viral? So what do you think? Anyone can answer about it, because like, after all these processes, we're talking about credit, like artwork, such like we're representing 1% of what's happening in the world. All these things only happen when things become more and more viral, like people start talking more and more about it. So at that time, how does the artist or a curator or a gallery's role comes in when it comes about authorship and credit? What do you think? Zicky, you can answer.
I think first and foremost, I think people like the name, like the artist's name will be like recognized at first, and then of course, like if there are people who are more interested in getting getting deeper with like the way the artist works or where it comes from, if they know about the artist, they will get into they will research on the galleries and stuff. And wait, what's the meaning? Like, what happened?
Viral. When the work becomes so viral,
Yeah, I know.
How does the artist like handle to properly maybe credit the community or credit the marginalized community or whoever he has worked with to get this artwork?
Oh, so sorry, I don't understand. So if we get viral,
yeah. So because like, if he get viral with a collective work, let's say for example, his name will be only the one will be in the viral, right? So what about the community that he has worked before? Do they really need to like be credited, or like do they still have the ownership and authorship? How does it like spread between? What do you think of that?
I think authorship is also because you're being you're like sitting in front of someone else who's like the authorship of the subject is like out. And ownership, I think is yes, like the artist or like the photographer will own like this photograph, like this space that makes like that makes the cover of like this magazine, like the photographer or the artist will own it. Essentially, like they get the right to reproduce it or sell it or whatever. But of course, like I totally think if you are making and you're putting your work by figuring your own face or body or like telling someone else's story, you totally owe it to the community in that sort of compensation, or also the work has to be to embody the work has to embody the how should I say, like it should embody the very complex and nuanced like the nature of like that specific like community. So the artist can like repay or like make justice to the community by doing that as well. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Do you have anything to add on to the question? So we can move. Okay, so we'll move on to another part where the money comes in, because like when you talk about all these things, money has to come from somewhere. Like, okay, so this part we will be talking about commissions, institutions, galleries, brands, all the things related with money. So the guiding question, the main question that I want to talk about is: can a photograph or an artwork really change the world, or like is it just a romantic gesture? So that's a very, very general thing that we've been discussing all the time. But okay, to go a little bit deeper, when we're like as Myanmar artists, or like maybe any Southeast Asian artist, we have been working with institutions here and there. So there's we have experienced somewhat of an institutional framing And so can a photograph or an artwork, when it comes to the institutional context, we have to work through the commissions, the grants, and collaboration with institution, but the institutions normally carry their own sort of like a structure, politics, whenever there's a project or anything. So I want to start with Zicky again, that when your image circulate without your control or your context, how do you respond? And how do you choose like which sort of institutions or fundings that you want to work with? Like, does it really reflect your context, or do you have to follow their institutional politics, or how do you like balance between that? There are like two part of the questions. So the first part is, when your image circulate without your control or context, how do you respond?
Actually, it hasn't actually happened to me just yet.
Okay.
I can sense it coming.
Oh, so you can sense it coming.
When you're set type of when your identity politics are like easier to clock and when you're from a certain place, within a certain country, I think it's easier for people or institutions to talk about you in a certain way, in a way that you didn't understand. I have after this exhibition, some reporters asked about my work. So theater life work, so it's about criminal work, it's about political work, and I felt so I was upset in the way that maybe I didn't do enough job trying to show what I wanted to show, and then I was but then I understand. I think sometimes it's just easier or it's for people to just put it in boxes and or make it use kind of the words or the context that is now or that's current. So I was maybe that was the case. So I think I cannot do much in terms of persuade people write about this or what. I cannot do as much, but if I'm being asked questions, I can talk about it. I can defend my work. It is much more than just political work. My work will be political, this, especially this story, it will be political nonetheless. And then it will all have different abilities, but also it also embodies so much more than that. And because it's an ongoing work, I have to ask myself also to make it more acceptable, I think.
Okay, so to add a little bit more for that, so does it really make a difference when your queer story, let's say your story that you wanted to project, does it really make any difference when it is being commissioned by someone else or under a grant of an institution? Does the narratives changes?
Oh, in my experience?
Okay.
From the three grades that I had, not from the institution, but I've listened what people have to the people that I start to look up to have to say about my work, that they have to what they see in me, how I have taken ideas, I have listened to ideas, and I have there are cases where it has become better, and there are cases where I was just no, this is yes, I like you so much, but I like you, I like your work, and I respect that, and I appreciate the honesty that you have for my work, the honesty also the courage to talk about my work without faith. But no, I'm not gonna do that. And I will just carry on doing this in this way that I can. So in terms of the institution, so I'm all yes, I've been happy with how it turned out, how I got to how I have the how I have terms of contextualizing or photographing or having my own approach. Yeah.
Okay, so my another question is for Hùng. When you do a reflection or a critic or review anything about that, when you see across a commission work or a political work that may have good intentions but fall short on an impact, how do you how do you reflect it, or how do you actually do your interpretation when it comes to that?
All right, so the question is it my own commission works or is someone else's commission works? I don't think I get the question. Is it so is it like, am I reading someone else's work and I'm interpreting it, or am I looking at my own? Okay, so if it's like a paid job, basically. I mean, this day and age, in this economy, you take what you can get. I mean, commission depends on the institution that you work with and the kind of negotiation contract that you have. I personally don't believe in going completely positive or going completely negative when it comes to writing, because there's always many sides to one shows or one events, one artist. In terms of commission works, yes, when I think that there is got kind of the underlying tone where you get commissioned to write about something, then people kind of expect it to, or at least the institution kind of expect it to have like a positive tone, I think. But I think, first of all, like if the institution trusts you enough to commission you, then they will take my writing. I don't really bother that much. And then, I mean, and like I said, I'm not going to write like a trash piece. Like I'm not going to say, oh, this is completely terrible, because it never is, right? A show, there's always a saving grace. There's always something that you will enjoy about a show, an exhibition, an artist's work. So I think the approach is to be honest. Whether it's a commission work or whether it's something that you personally are invested in and you want to approach it with writing, you talk about I personally like to open with what I like and then moving on to things that, not bad, but like things that I questioned or the questions that might come out of it. I mean, because then it comes to that burden of the burden of representation that you're talking about, right? Like we have few writers in the regions and even fewer shows. And, if you have access to a global audience, then, how do you balance that representation and your own interpretation? How much of it do you give? How much of it do you negotiate? Because I think for art writers, I think there's some in the room, I hope, future art writers, current art writers. And you kind of, you go to the global scene, there's already expectation, there's already, stereotypes, things that people expect to hear. Usually it's political, usually it's exotic, usually it's reductive, not very interesting narratives. But you kind of have to give a little bit of that. You have to learn to negotiate how to give a little bit of that just to hook them in. And then you're like, but we're not going to talk about that. We'll talk about the artwork. We'll talk about the artist. We'll talk about the region. I am not going to do your dance. I will lure you in. It's like the cat in the Chinese shops. So you bring them in, you give them a full sense of security, and then you're like, here's what you're actually going to read. So at least that's how I deal with it. Because we can't escape tropes. At the end of the day, and it's better to just play with them. Twist them around, turn them on their own, little pivoting leg, and then, and then you introduce your own voice, because at the end of the day, you are the person writing that piece. You're not, and after you write the commission piece, the institution can still decide not to publish it. So I think this is the point when you're like, I made peace with the piece. I send it to another person. It can be an editor, it can be a gallerist, it can be an institutional curator, and then they decide what they want to do with it. But make sure you negotiate the contract so you still get paid. Somewhat. I mean, ideally, you'll get paid even if they don't publish, but you know, it's a case by case point. I'm not pointing to any institution. I'm just saying that it's a case by case point, and you really need to negotiate for yourself. You go in because, you know, I think a lot of time we in the region, we're like, oh, we're desperate for opportunities. It's so amazing that, you know, is Biennale wants us to write for it. I'm like, no, you're lucky to have us. We are your voice. We are your tokens, whatever you want to call us, but you need us. Without us, you can't fulfill your diversity quota, so good luck. You're going to pay me while you're at it too. Geez, can we do better with this thing? Maybe I put it a little bit further. But so yeah, that's kind of how you go at it. But of course, I mean, look, if you have to write to make money, and if you need payment, go for it. Write whatever they want you to write. You know, and you can be honest to yourself about it. And I have written piece that I'm like, I'm not proud of this. This will never go into my CV. But, you know, it's something, at least you make that separation in your mind. This is something that I write so that I can pay rent. This is something that I write because I actually believe in it. And I think it's good to draw that clear distinction so that for yourself, you don't get confused. You're like, oh, so what actually do I like in the end? I was like, oh no, actually I don't like that. I write about it so I can get paid. So yeah, I mean, we're already kind of in a broken system. The system is broken, and you as one person, you kind of have to fend for yourself while still being aware that you are in a system, no matter how broken it is. And then it's all about negotiation, right? Communication. So negotiate as much as you can, but know that you're going up against a whole institution. There's very little thing that you can do on a single commission project to change it. So I think this is for like the writers and also artists as well. I think curators, art workers. I think all of us. I mean, we negotiate to a certain point, and then we're just like, okay, because we're not paid enough for this bullshit. But yeah, so I think that's what I have to say.
What would you?
I mean, 100% agree on that.
Yeah.
Definitely. And as a queer artist, curator, we negotiate all the time. It just, you know, our identity become negotiation. Like, it's crazy how we have crisis. We're like on the brink of World War III, right? And people still try to negotiate which toilet we go to, or which fucking pronouns we get to use in our legal document. Our existence is the bloody negotiation. And I think when it comes to work or presentation of work, same. Like, it's always a negotiation of how much we're going to fit the box and how much we actually going to tell the story. I mean, even in this exhibition, I mean, we talk about it how, you know, people want to, when they talk about Burmese art, they want very particular things. They want to talk like conflict. They want to talk like geography, politics, and things like that. And then here, you know, we decided that can be, you know, some kind of groundwork for this, but that is not the main narrative that we're going to talk, you know, or even about queer people, like how queer identities are perceived. Here we're like, you know what? Yeah, we're doing a group of 8 queer artists and they all have to migrate it for one reason or another, but we're not playing a victim here. None of us are. And if you actually look at each works, each of them have their own insights, their inspiration, the way of their building bodies, they're building homes, network of care, you know. So I mean, even in this show, we're negotiating what expectation of outside versus our own authentic stories. And I think that's always the case. And yes, I mean, especially in the art world, I'm sure we all know, it's like either like colonial guilt or something like a corporate CSR program or like some kind of black market money laundering. We always up against something that we might feel a bit weird about when it comes to creating new work. But yeah, change can't happen just with one single commission, as one said. I think it's a collective thing, and it's a culmination of efforts that shift the paradigm for sure. So yes, keep negotiating.
So the key word is negotiation when it comes to all this. So like my final question is always something very fun and very social media oriented, because like because like anything we do, we get reflected or like said something by someone on social media. So if someone like makes fun of you, like makes a meme out of your work or like talk about you, how do you respond? Did you become just cringe or just become full on, I'm gonna sue you, or like you're just gonna repost with a clever option and make it more viral, or you can just make them a meme again. So have you ever encountered that sort of like situation? Because yeah, when we talk about ownership, narratives, everything, in the end of the day, there will be someone saying something with another caption on social media. So what is the response from the real owner? I think Old can start with this.
Oh yes, I've been a meme many times. Actually, there's a meme account on Instagram. What's it called? Is it Bangkok Thai art memes or something? That she just make meme about Thai art scene like every day, which I think is brilliant. I love memes. And the thing is, meme is like a new language. For me, actually talking about AI and social media, we are operating with new language now, that talks about things that we can't even talk about other places in other contexts. So yes, I share it. I'll definitely meme it. Yes, for sure.
Okay, Zicky, do you have any experience on that? I want to know it from everyone for this question.
I don't have that kind of experience before.
So,
just one or like two people talking about my work. Talking about my work or like
okay.
Yeah. But only do I share it?
Yeah. Did you sue it back or repost or meme them?
I don't think I can do it anymore.
I kind of love that. Okay.
Like still super serious. But I think I was just like trying to make that felt like art, like a fun way to engage in the conversation.
Okay. So.
I think I've encountered both. I've had people tell me that they love my writing, and I've had people tell me that there are things that I can improve. I think you take it case by case. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's nice to hear that, oh, your writing is amazing. Your writing, it's so important. But at the end of the day, you know that your writing will be gone in like 2 weeks and something else will replace it, right? Because it's a cycle of social media. Nothing is that important anymore. So I think kind of taking that attitude, you're like, well, I mean, even if you hate my article, it will be gone in 2 weeks. So along with your hate. So I think it's fine. One time I got a very interesting response. He actually read the whole article, made very detailed notes about what he disagreed with. He's a Singaporean, by the way. I'm not saying name, but he's Singaporean. He's very detailed, very kind of, he's not like negative, but he just like, oh, I disagree with this part. And I think the author, I'm like, oh, that's my first time being referred as the author. The author like made a lot of assumptions, and I'm like, well, I'm writing about a dead person. Of course I'm making assumptions. it's archival materials of plants, botanical plants. I'm like, it's not even a person, but okay. So, and then the institution that I wrote for actually reached out to me and like, oh, do you want to engage with this person? Do you want to send an email back? We can facilitate that kind of context. And I said no. Not because I'm not interested or because I'm not willing to engage, but I was just tired. Personally speaking, I don't have the brain space for it. I'm not like mentally ready to have that kind of conversation. Maybe now I should revisit it. I was like, can you introduce me to that person so when I go to Singapore, I can meet him? But again, just because someone put out an invitation doesn't mean you have to say yes. Oftentimes I say no to people. Yeah, so, you can choose how you go with it. It's a case by case thing. And, if you are a very creative person, you can turn it into an artwork even. You can make a meme out of it. You can spin it around and turn it into the next viral Instagram post. I'm not viral on Instagram. I barely get like 2 likes on my post. So, but despite everything, I value the fact that they spend so much time reading my article. I might not respond back, but there is a sense of appreciation. Like if someone cares so much about your work, this random stranger that you've never met in your life, spend at least an hour reading your stuff and writing a careful response, you should appreciate that person. Despite, what they might say about you. You can choose to engage afterward or not, but you should appreciate that. And if you learn something from that response, you should.
Yeah, my final question to end this, what do you want to say to a younger artist or a younger student who you see like stealing your work or stealing other people's stories? Like, I don't know, like sometimes you can see something like that. So how do you do you engage?
Wait, what? If someone stole my work?
No, like stealing as in like copying, trying to
copy my work?
taking your style or because it's about ownership and authorship. No, I mean but because there's like the term of inspiration comes in, like how do you
Oh my God.
It's a younger, so maybe it's a student or a younger artist or maybe a social media account,
Yeah.
How do you want to what advice are you gonna give it to the artist? Oh my God. Okay, let's say it's like 22,
This actually happened so many times with me. But everyone here can, that from SAC know, or Thai art scene know. When I open my show, at least 10 different queer artists will do the same theme within 2 months of that show. And when I did reclining nude, and I did tarot, then the whole bunch of people start doing tarot gaze. And then I did the cowboy show. By the way, my meme was like how to say that you're going to old Montien show without saying you're going. And then it's like you're wearing a thong or like a cowboy, the pink cowboy hat, which I thought was really funny. And then after my cowboy show, 10 different other artists were doing cowboy theme artwork, within 2 months. And people were coming up to me, sending me all these things, and they're like, are you angry? They are copying your work or your inspiration. And I was really happy, actually. And they say copy, it's a flattering or something. Yeah. Imitation is a form of flattering. Definitely. And also when you make artwork, you want it to touch people. And I'm really happy that it touches them or inspire them to create something. So, and they can never do what I do, right? So, for example, the cowboy stuff, my dad used to run a cowboy saloon in Don Mueang, and he was obsessed with cowboy. So when he passed away, I created a cowboy theme show in his honor. So regardless of what other people cowboy version would be, it would not be the same as mine. But yeah, maybe they were inspired by that, and then they take it into their own thing. And I think that's how art should be. Yes, we have authorship of our voices, of our story, but at the same time, we're all connected and we all inspire each other and we tell each other's stories, and that's how we, I think, carry on our legacy, make change, negotiate, So yeah, I'll be happy. I'll be like, keep copying.
Zicky, do you have any experience on this matter?
It's also hard to tell.
Yeah.
And then like something more like tracking or like something that's really fast. So sometimes I like to think that maybe they like this and this and that. But then I also like feel that it's so different. Like what I mean, it's also what you have to say, right? And what you have to say, and what I want to say will hopefully one that's different from whoever that wants to do something similar. I mean, not like in terms of like my audio work, there is like I will say if I notice I feel really good like replicate or like what to do what I want to do. But yeah, I think that I think we'll always do it. But also like a good artwork will always get accolades. Accolades will always like credit. And like it will always be like we have so many different sides, and I think it's fine.
Okay. Did you want to add anything? Or? Okay. Yeah, plagiarism. So, okay. Yeah, because we can't get inspiration from writings like.
I mean, the inspiration comes in different forms. Like let's say they read my article and they are curious to check out. So that's a form.
That's an inspiration. Okay, so yeah, so we'll be closing the talk program. So from all these questions and all the talks, so I have a little notes. So when it comes to storytelling and narratives and authorship, the main thing is when it comes to responding in a way that the main thing is honesty, probably. And then we talk a lot about negotiation. When it comes to maybe funding or like authorship or whatever credit about it, it's always about negotiation and how well do we want to like put one another. And so the storytelling and narratives are never neutral. So it's a lot about, it's never a straight emotion. It's a lot of like power dynamics, a lot of emotions, a lot of like care in it. So yeah, that's my intake on it. And then if you guys have any questions among one another or from the audience, please let me know, because I know there are some art writers, artists, a lot of art community in our crowd today. Anyone? Gaia?
Zicky can hear it in Laos.
So this isn't like super like fully fledged, but how do you negotiate between visibility and authenticity? So like, I mean, if you have like a story that you want to be more like open to a wider audience, how do you stay true to that community or like yourself? Especially if it's like on a big platform that tends to bring in more like bureaucratic stuff where
I'm so sorry. I cannot really grasp what you're saying. Please repeat.
Zicky, I can help. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you better.
Okay. So, well, Gaia is asking, how do you negotiate when it comes to visibility and authenticity, right? So certain story, you want people to have access to it, but at the same time, you don't want to change who you are or the core of your story. Am I getting your question right? Yeah. Where do we find the line, when it comes to making work that represent us, but at the same time, you want as much visibility as possible?
Community that you are taking the story from. And I think it's essential to have like a shared, like some sort of shared experience. You need to get it. You know, like, how should I say it? You need to have like, this sort of like shared like living experience or something that you share in between. I think it's important so that it comes off as authenticity. I think, and also I think it's important to have empathy as well. How you see these people and how you want to represent them, like if you are representing them. I think empathy is important as well. But like we said like before, like also at the end of the day, honesty is so important, right? The way that like there's like empathy, whatever, all of that and like your right, like your view, like of like these groups, I think is important. But the way that you see, you have to show it honestly as well. So that if you mix it into mix all of them, I think it can be somewhat like a more nuanced and like more like authentic like story.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
You want me to add to that? Okay, or good? Okay. For me, I never see it as a two different side. I I always feel like the more authentic I am, the more visibility they get. And that's yes, there come parts of myself that is not super mainstream or acceptable or the big crowd, but I think honesty is still the most important currency when it comes to reaching out to people. Because we all, at the end of the day, we have soul, we have, kindness, we have father and mothers, we have love, we have sadness, we have grief. This kind of thing, the more honest you are, the more authentic you are on those, then you get visibility anyway. So that's kind of my take on it. Okay.
Anyone else have questions, or we can just wrap it up? Thank you very much, guys, and thank you, Ode and Hùng.
Are you gonna make a meme out of this or not? Yes. God damn it.
Thank you very much, guys.